Ya lo hace. Pierna derecha, directo al arco. ¡Golazo! ¡Golazo!
The world of football with a soccer perspective. This is Soccer Today with Duane, Rollins and Kevin Laramee. Live on the Sports Podcasting Network.
And good day, good night. Welcome to Soccer Today for December 28th, 2017. Just 2 shows left with 2017. And Duane, you know, we just take a few days off and a lot of people want to know, oh, how did you like your Boxing Day game? How did your team win? Is it 18 straight victories? But the most important question of all, how was the Doctor Who special?
I quite enjoyed it. I did a little mini review on the Twitter feeds for those that want to look. But I am a fan of Doctor Who. I'm a fan of the idea of them bringing in a female doctor because I'm not a Neanderthal. I can't even say that word, so I'm not even going to say it again.
Yeah.
I'm not a dinosaur. There you go. I thought it was brilliant to paraphrase Jodie Whittaker's first line, which was "Oh, brilliant," which I thought was a perfect line too. No, it's good fun times. I love Doctor Who, and I enjoyed it. And I'm sad that I'm going to have to wait 8 months before I see it again. But
I know, right? It's kind of a teaser, literally. Like, okay, we'll give you a special with 2 great doctors, and one of them is going to regenerate, and you'll see the new one, but you can't wait. You can't watch until the fall.
No, exactly. And it is the fall. It was the spring the last couple of years, but it's the fall this year. So
so Doctor Who is just like the CONCACAF Champions League now. Would you get excited for it and you have to wait months for it?
Yeah, well, yeah. In Toronto FC's case, you qualified for it twice. So there you go.
Well, twice upon a time, qualified twice for the TCL. Kind of fitting. Let's talk about Man City for a second, Wayne. I know we had a little deeper in our outline, but 15 points clear, 18 in a row. Who's going to stop them? Because right now, I don't think nobody can.
Well, if you want to do some hashtag math, right now, I did this math right now. If Manchester City were to finish they're halfway through the season now. Every team is. So if they were to go the second half of the season at a 50% pace, so they're only getting 1.5 out of every 3 points available to them, which is way below a pace that they have played in any year, even last year, which was their worst year. That would be way below what you would expect out of them. So if they were to do that, though, let's say they slump badly, they would still finish based on the results already on the board with 86 points. So if you look at the title winners over the past few years, 86, that usually gets it done. Or it's very, very close to getting it done. And basically what it would mean is if you look at the United, that would mean that United could only, they're the nearest chaser. Chelsea's only a point behind them now with United dropping more points in the weekend, on Boxing Day. But if you look at United right now, for them to overcome just that 50% return on City, which I don't think anyone thinks is going to happen, but regardless, let's just go there for a second. They could only drop 11 more points all season. So it is right now, when you do the hashtag math, it is extremely unlikely that City will be overtaken. They would need to collapse. Probably they would need a team chasing them, a Chelsea or United, to go perfect, and they would need to collapse at a level that is not expected at all. They would need to be, losing 2 of 3 the rest of the way type stuff. And does anyone really see that happening? No.
We barely see them lose a game, never mind an epic collapse for the rest of the season. That's how good they've played this year. Still undefeated in the Premier League in 2017-18. Their only defeat since the fall, since the beginning of this season, is in the Champions League in a dead rubber in the last game of the group stage where they really had nothing to gain anyways.
With the derby coming up in 4 days, right?
Yes, exactly. So with the derby that they have won 4 days later.
Yeah, it was. It's been a remarkable first half of the season for sure. And look, there's 2 other technically draws in there. There are 3 draws. Obviously, the Everton one that's on the board, plus the 2 games in the League Cup. They're very lucky to be in the League Cup semifinal. But I think that says something too, that even in penalty shootouts, they're winning. They're dominating those shootouts. They're able to get the job done, even when they're not playing their best, even when they have kind of a D lineup out there. They're in the semifinals of the League Cup, and they drew Bristol, so you would have,
they got lucky there.
Story, but you would have
At least you
have to
get
think that
the
they're going to get by
Bristol.
that one.
You get a Bristol City Man City matchup, and if you're a Bristol City fan like our friend Simon Fudge, this type of matchup is what you wanted. After just beating Man United, you got a chance to maybe beat the other team in Manchester. But yeah, it's going to be tough. Man City will win.
Well, especially over
Especially over two
legs,
games,
too,
right?
like,
There's no chance it can happen
yeah.
over 2 games. Even
Yeah,
United would have beat Bristol over 2 games, especially the way it happened, right? The goal in the 90th minute, those type of moments happens in one-off, but in a home and away series, it's pretty rare.
Yeah, look, that there. I mean, there's never anything for 100% sure, but we're talking 99.99% certain that City is going to advance to the League Cup final, which means they're a win away from winning one of the infamous quad. Now, I don't like talking about the quad because that includes the Champions League. And Pep this week, he was asked point blank, "Are you the favorite to win the Champions League?" And his response was brilliant. He said, "Who does Messi play for?" And then they sort of paused and went silent and go, "They're the favorite." So there you go.
It's a fair assessment. We have to give Pep credit on that one. Let's change focus for a second before we actually talk about some other news in Major League Soccer. In Major League Soccer 2, I know that doesn't exist, but all right, in the USL, TFC2, Jason Bent, no more the head coach of TFC2, going in a different directions. What have you heard, and what can you tell us of the tenure of Jason Bent as head coach of TFC2 in the USL?
Like, he's a very well-respected coach and young coach too. Still relatively young because Jason Bent had to retire because of he was one of the first people that had to retire because of the head injury.
Concussion,
before,
right? Concussion.
Before his time. Yeah. So yeah, exactly. And that was when he had to retire. That was back before this was a common thing to have happened. So you can imagine how bad they must have been. So it's unfortunate for him. But look, as he's still well respected in the community, but there is no denying that if you look at pure results on the TFC2 front over the first 3 seasons, they just haven't been very good. And beyond that, other than Raheem Edwards, no one has really made a major impact from the academy or from the TFC2 situation moving on up. And I think that if you listen to some of the interviews and from talking to other people around the scene too, reading between the lines, you'll notice that TFC2 is going to shift its focus a little bit next year. And we said this might happen last year too, but I think that with Bent in charge, it was going to be impossible for them to completely move away from their hyper development, hyper youth focused, hyper Canadian youth focused format that they used in the past. You look at some of the moves they made in the off season. There's heavy rumors that they're bringing in this 19-year-old kid from Nigeria, I believe, or Ghana, one of the two. I forget which half. A West African kid at any rate.
Yeah, Mohamed Saleh and not Salah. That's the big difference. Not Mo Salah, but Mo Saleh might be coming in.
Yeah, yes. Well, yeah, a bit of a difference there. But yeah, nonetheless, so this is a 19-year-old that they're going to bring in, and not to the first team. They're going to bring him to the USL team. And there's also, they signed the first team contract, the American International that has spent the last couple of years in development academy down the States. So I suspect that he'll play for the USL team as well next year. And I believe that based on what I'm hearing and these moves in place and the fact that they're moving away from Jason Bent suggests to me that there will be a greater emphasis on the results next year, that they will be expecting TFC2 to not only be producing and focusing on the development side of things, but also winning games and getting into the playoffs and doing what the New York Red Bulls 2 did a couple of years ago. You look at the Red Bulls 2, and anyone that says that the MLS 2 teams can't compete while still developing it they won the championship. So how is that possible? TFC2 can compete.
I don't think this move is a coincidence when you look at TFC2's venue for next year and the change of mentality and how that team is now going to be asked to draw a crowd. That team is going to be asked to generate some revenues now, having their time at Lamport Stadium in the Liberty Village, to have a crowd following this team. That's the next step for TFC2. It would have been for other cases if WFC2 or FC Montreal still exist. It would have been the same pattern, but unfortunately they are no more. TFC2, the only quote-unquote reserve team left in Canada for an MLS team in USL. You do have that feeling that this team's going to be asked to win more, to draw that crowd, to draw those people in the seats, those 18 wide in seats, to make sure that people watch those games. And that's the next step, and that's the evolution of TFC2. And I don't think it's a coincidence now that they're going to ask for more results to make sure that you can promote a team as well to get people to watch it.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree that they're not necessarily going to say, win a championship or you're out type stuff, but they are going to say win games and play attacking football that matches what TFC 1 is doing. And the other part of this too is that by moving them downtown, or Liberty Village, depending on where you consider Toronto downtown, and locals would say that's not downtown. Tourists would say it is.
Yeah, tourists say you can walk 5-10 minutes and you're there, so it's downtown, and locals be like, nah. You can't just get there easily. So.
Yeah, it's west of Spadina. It's not downtown, but nonetheless, it is close to downtown, and it's close to, more importantly, TFC's fan base. A lot of TFC fans, a lot of the hardcore TFC fans are going to be going to those games next year. You can guarantee that maybe the pure numbers, and we can argue one way or the other how many people they will draw to those games. I think they're going to draw between 4,000 and 5,000 per game. I think it's going to do quite well that way. And I think 4,000 or 5,000 for a USL game is on a Friday night is going to be brilliant. It's going to be great. And it's going to be a great way to kick off your weekend. It's going to keep me out of trouble too, which I like, nonetheless. But I guarantee you that regardless, even if it's 2,000 or 3,000, 1,000 of those 2,000 or 3,000 are going to be the fans that are in the South End that are waving flags, or fans that are not in the South End but are tuned in week out, or reading Twitter or listening to shows like this, that they want to follow these players closely. And there's going to be an inherent pressure with that, of having people that are paying attention and that know what's going on. When they were up in Vaughan, it was just so difficult for people to get up there. And again, I can't stress this enough, and I don't want to make this a Toronto-centric tour, transit show, but it was nearly impossible to get there by transit. And so many of TFC's biggest fans rely on transit, or have to work and drive home and then drive up. And the traffic in this city is insane, that it was just very, very difficult to get there unless you lived within 20, 30 minutes of that place. And there just weren't enough of them that did that. So this is going to increase the visibility of the team, and it's going to, and as such, demand that there's going to be results. You can't, it's going to be hard to really draw a lot of attention or excitement around a team that loses 3 out of every 4 games it plays, when you have a team that's, 3 blocks south that is the defending MLS Cup champions and wins 3 out of every 4 games it plays. So that's going to be a difficult challenge, but I think it's going to be good for the evolution. I don't want them to completely, go all in and start signing 30-year-olds, and I don't think they will. But
there's a fair middle ground in between.
Exactly, and I think the Whitecaps did that pretty well at times too, and maybe to get to where they did it will be the way to go. And look, there's an investment here too, right? They're just standing to lose money, as you say. They want to attract some crowds to recoup some of that loss.
And I think it's part of a soccer player's job as well, when you're looking into the professional level, to draw people. It's not just about just playing the game, right? It's just like, let's look at other sports. It's not to an extent of a boxing or UFC mixed martial art where only superstars draw people in, and it's not about how you fight, it's about how you talk about your fight. But it's a bit that case in my mind. As a professional player, if you're able to create a synergy with the crowd, with fans, if you have a personality that's easily falling in love with, that people will just watch you play and fall in love with you, it's kind of part of it too. If you can draw a crowd and become a hero of the supporters, that's kind of part of a soccer player's mentality too. So the fact that they'll be able to test those aptitudes, those abilities, as not just a soccer player, not just as a professional, not just as a guy who's disciplined and eating right and training right and being there on time, first in, last out. It's not just about that. Sometimes you need personality, and those are the type of we'll see that happen. We'll see a TFC 2 player make a connection with the crowd and become a superhero for those fans in attendance, and create a microcosm star system below TFC's team that actually will be useful for that player's confidence, and might be what those type of players need to finally bridge the big gap between a TFC 2 and a TFC, or the reserve team and the first team. So there's a lot of positives that can come out of asking a bit more of your USL team, not just on the pitch, but as responsibilities to fill the stands too.
Yeah, no, exactly. Look, right now here in Canada, we're watching them, some of us anyway, although the attendance numbers are down, but we're watching the World Juniors. And each year that creates a star system at that level where people start to look forward to seeing those players and follow those players out of their junior career as they try and advance to the pros. And there's a narrative there that people really buy into and enjoy. Like, it's always fun to watch a player that you knew before when they make it big. And that's something that, it's why Raheem Edwards excited so many of us this year and we'll continue to excite people in Montreal, I suppose, next year.
That's what is exciting a lot of us right now. That's totally different.
Because we watched him go through the system, and we watched him go through systems that weren't just TFC. The other thing too, not to belabor TFC's academy system, but there are a lot of refocusing that's happening at that level. They've done pretty well, I think, based on, compared to other teams, but I think that they believe internally that they can do better, and that's why their TFC3 will still remain in League One Ontario, but they're taking their younger academy kids, and they're finally going to put them in the U.S. Development system, the U.S. Premier Development League. They're going to be playing the U14s, the
USSD.
I think even the U12. With the U16, U4, whatever. The age groups there, so they'll be competing along with other MLS teams at that level, and then eventually going up to League One Ontario, which I would hate to see them ever leave L10 only, not just because I have an affiliation with it, but because I think it does test them in a different way because it's a slightly older league. But a lot of changes happening at that level, and the biggest, most visible one will be TFC2 and the removal of Jason Bent. Although we wish that the young coach well, and hopefully he lands on his feet, and hopefully not to belabor this point that we keep making. Hopefully maybe the Canadian Premier League will get going.
Well, speaking of Canadian Premier League, let's go there before we take the break. A few days ago, there was a tweet by Canadian Premier League, CPL Soccer. It was a while. It's been a while since the last tweet before this one, saying, look, we're going to have a very, very busy 2018 ahead of us. So maybe for 2019, Jason Bent will have a new job.
Yeah, and that anything that I've been told, and that what we reported on this show, like big scoop that it wasn't going to start next year, but nonetheless, when we did report that, the implication to that was that 2019 was necessary, and everyone I talked to in the system recognizes that. There's no doubt out there. I mean, there might be some cold feet on the investment side, and that's where the complications lie. But in terms of the people that are actually pushing this agenda and trying to get it done and working behind the scenes, everyone understands how vital it is that they're up and running by a year and a half from now. Which is crazy that 2019 is a year and a half from now, but it is. So there you go.
Yeah, that is crazy. Just like when I look at my thermometer right now, it says minus 30 something. That is pretty insane. But welcome to winter. We'll take a break. And when we come back, we'll talk about a bit of rumors, trades, signing in Major League Soccer, and especially in Orlando.
You are listening to Soccer Today. Follow us on Twitter at SoccerTodaySPN and like our Facebook page, facebook.com/Sports Podcasting Network. You can find the podcast version of all the shows we do on iTunes, Apple Podcast, Google Play Store, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, and anywhere you get your podcast.
And we're back on Soccer Today. Duane Rollins with myself, Kevin Laramee. Orlando City is making a splash in the news over the last few days. Duane, officially, Orlando City Soccer Club acquires Mohamed El Munir on a signing and Jose Villarreal from LA Galaxy on a trade.
Yeah, Villarreal, I really like that one, although he's a little older than I remember. He's 24 now and hasn't really played a lot. This is a guy that, if you go back 4 years ago, was really the rage. A lot of people thought he would be the poster child for success coming out of the academy. Now, he got stuck in a system in LA where he just simply wasn't going to get the time and hasn't had the opportunity to shine. I think in Orlando, this is a clear indication that they're bringing him in with the idea that he will if he in fact signs with them, they acquired his rights. They didn't acquire him per se, but they do have to sign him. But I think they got him with the intention of signing him.
Yeah, and it only cost him a third-round pick in the 2019 MLS Super Draft. So the cost for his rights, which is basically like not even like a few cones. So for Orlando, it's a no-brainer. You can try to sign him, and you have maybe a big upside if he agrees, which there's probably a very fair chance that he does, depending of he doesn't have other offers anyways. He's still like linked to MLS anyways. He can't go anywhere else. So if he wants to play, he kind of has to take that deal.
Yeah, well, and they're bringing him with the intention to play him, and this is good for both Orlando. I think it's good in the sense that for him to get out of LA, so it's good for him too. And look, the burden, if they do in fact play him, the onus is on him at that point. All of us in MLS circles have been talking about this. I'm not going to call him a kid anymore. He's 24. This player for a long, long time, and it's now imperative upon him to prove that our belief in him and belief in his skill was correct, because if he gets the opportunity and he doesn't seize hold of it, then maybe LA was right not to play him. Maybe Bruce Arena wasn't being a stubborn old man that refuses to play kids, although I tend to think there probably was an element of that too. I think this says something a little bit. The failure of Villarreal sort of speaks a little bit to LA and how maybe they are the epitome of MLS 2.0 in many ways, and how just like any shift from 2.0 to 3.0 or whatever,
from Windows 7 to 8. Or from Windows whatever to XP.
Exactly. That there's always going to be someone that was like a hardcore believer in the previous system that's going to hold off to their detriment. And I think LA might kind of be caught in between right now, in the sense that they no longer have a dominance in terms of their ability to outspend, and it no longer works to just go out and get 33-year-old Europeans that have had great careers. Like, you're going to have to be more creative and more successful in finding high-end TAM and underrated DP signings out there. That's how you're going to win in this new version of MLS, whatever it is. And I'm not sure whether LA completely knows how to do that yet. And they also need to utilize the talent within. And the fact that they didn't use Villarreal and they didn't really give him a chance sort of speaks to me that the Galaxy, they may not be out of the woods just yet.
Are you saying the LA Galaxy are the Montreal Canadiens of Major League Soccer? That it used to be the
Yeah, who's their Carey Price though? Although we know Carey Price was.
Their Carey Price was Landon Donovan, but no, and I think the Villarreal case. I think there's another very similar case with LA as well in the same timetable that we're talking about. And that's Jack McBean. I think those two players that came out of the academy that were supposed to be the future of this club, at least in the homegrown type of player or player that they develop, if they don't necessarily fall always under the homegrown umbrella. But the Jack McBean and Jose Villarreal are similar cases of players that we were expecting a lot for 3 years ago, but actually never were able to bridge that final step, that final gap between USL success, sporadic presence in Major League Soccer, and being a starter and a regular name in your starting 11.
Yeah, Villarreal especially jumps out to people, and I think it's because he was Hispanic as well. And there's always long been this belief that MLS teams and American soccer in general has not done a good job at identifying and developing young Hispanic players, Mexican American or Mexican Hispanic players out there. And this was a young one that came up and had the roots that normally would have saw him go south, but instead he stayed in the United States, stayed with an MLS team, and yet here we are 4 years later, and we're sort of illustrating maybe why these players do often, when they have a choice to go south, to go to Mexico, they do it because they have better development structures down there. That's, we can change that. It's new. The academy's only started in MLS a decade ago. So that's, be honest here with how realistic it is for them to be, succeeding at the same level as an academy that's 100 years old. But nonetheless, there still needs to be a little bit better effort. And I think it is good, as I said, that he's going to have this opportunity to prove his talent. And it's up to him now. And that's really all you can ask. I mean, a lot of times we'll see players that look very exciting at 18 that will burn out at 21. I mean, there's a very, very famous one that looked very exciting at 14 in the United States, and now is a punchline, right? So,
yeah, but at that time, probably you and I would look exciting if we were 13, 14 that can just keep the ball for a little while. But no, you're right. We had our fair share of examples of getting excited a bit too early for some young players. Speaking of getting excited, there's El Munir that joins as well, Orlando. He's a player that made 7 apparitions for Partizan Belgrade, a club in Serbia, one of the biggest clubs in the Serbian league. They have won their league last year. He had 7 games in that season. Now will be playing for Orlando. But the name that's catching attention, according to Jeff Router, friend of the show here, hello Jeff if you're listening, Some sources telling him that the Red Bulls are finalizing a trade to send Sasha Kleshtan to Orlando. Let's not forget, Sasha will have a game suspension. He will start the season in the stands because of his altercation in the Eastern Conference Final in the tunnel with Josie. So that being said, he might be serving that suspension under a different color of kit.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. Sorry, I'm just having flashbacks to that game. I realized how close
like the police
having it all go wrong.
The police had to separate everyone in the tunnel, and literally Josie getting mobbed by. Yeah, it was something. The playoffs, wasn't it?
Yeah. Normally, it's very difficult to pinpoint TFC's low point of the season because there's so many. But I think in this particular past season, that would be clear as day. That brawl and
the 5-3 at Toronto, Montreal. Montreal's only highlight of 2017. And when I'm saying Montreal, I'm not saying just the impact. I'm saying the entire city. That's our only highlight in sports in 2017 is that win at BMO Field.
Did Concordia or McGill win like a track and field championship or something? Maybe.
Laval lost the Vanier Cup, so no, nothing. Terrible in 2017 here.
All right, fair enough. Yeah, they lost to Western. Thank you very much. Don't get me going about the omelets at any rate.
Yeah, exactly.
Thanks very much. One job, Laval. One job.
You had one job, not less. Laurier.
For our American listeners right now, I went to Wilfrid Laurier, which is a rival of the team that won the championship, the National Football Championship in Canada. Blah blah blah. And yeah. Anyway, it's like University of Miami.
I never went to Laval. I used to live in Laval, but I actually hate Laval University because it's in Quebec City. And if you know me, you know that Quebec City and I aren't the best of friends.
There you go. All right. So getting off that topic, that's some old school Duane talk there. Go Hawks in 2018. The Vaniers coming back.
And Western, anyway. Who's the Golden Gales? Golden Gales of Western?
Western or Mustang?
No, Laurier. Laurier is the Golden Gales.
Yes. Golden Gales are Queens. The Golden Hawks are Laurier.
True. Oh, yeah.
Come on, man. Get your Canadian University nicknames right.
I know. Mount Allison. I remember Mount Allison. Come on.
The Mounties, because it's Mount Allison and then Laval. For those that are really curious, are they Rougeot?
Which makes no sense. How? I don't understand. There's 3 teams in Quebec. Like, there's 6 teams, and there's 3 teams named by color. Like, dude, come on. Get a bit of imagination. Find a name or something.
Well, Carabin is kind of a funny name too, but anyway.
Well, at least Carabin means something. He means like a student of medicine, which is like red and gold is 2 colors. Anyways, back to soccer.
And it's what's Sherbrooke? They're green and
gold. Right? It's like why?
Yeah.
Why?
Verdior. There you go. All right. This is way off topic.
Yeah. So Kleston, Orlando.
Look, that's a strange move for New York's sake, in my mind. He's still a very good player. Now, he's getting a bit on, and I think it just speaks to basically the idea that Orlando is looking to sort of emulate that triangle again, and they want Kleshtan to come in to kind of run it in the same way that Beckerman did back in the day in Salt Lake City. That's kind of what I take away from this. Now, as I said, the other part of this, if you're looking at it from a Red Bulls perspective, he's a pretty good player, a pretty key player for them, and, this might mean that they have something in the works that's a little bit bigger name, a little bit bigger impact, right? And maybe they're looking to bring a guy in that plays the same role as Kleshtan that maybe they believe plays at a higher level for a higher salary level. And that will make him expendable.
I would even go as further than that, Duane, and that's all right. Start speculating. I'm speculating starting now. If you look at Sasha Kleshtan, his last moment with the Red Bull New York in the tunnel, that moment, there was other moments like this throughout the season too. And his relationship with Jesse Marsh wasn't the same in 2017 and 2016. And if you're looking at example Montreal, a lot of moves they made since naming Rémi Garde as their new head coach for 2018 is kind of like taking control back. I'm not saying taking his locker room back, but I'm saying it a little bit. I don't know if this move by New York is in the same vein, maybe, of, look, taking control back of this team, of this locker room, of this group of players. You didn't achieve as much as you expected to, and you were lucky. Well, you were lucky. You had some results in the playoff as well, but the regular season didn't pan out like you anticipated to begin with, and you did have some discipline problems with certain players. So maybe it's Jesse Marsh and the front office of the Red Bulls taking back the control of this team.
Yeah, it could be for sure, and trying to put their own stamp on it in some way. Questions for I've heard is kind of a handle at times, hard to handle at times too.
Yes, that's what I was trying to say, being nicely though, pretty much.
Yeah, it's a bit of a difficult personality, we'll say. So that'll be something to watch there. But it certainly does mean, like you mentioned the other signing that Orlando brought in, the Serbian league player. I mean, I don't know anything about him. I'm not going to pretend to know anything about him. I do know that the signing reminds me an awfully lot of what TFC used to do back in the day, bringing in guys from Eastern European leagues with 12 appearances the year before. Like, I don't know about that one, but maybe they found a gem. Who knows? We'll have to wait to see him play. Sometimes those guys work, but they more often than not don't. I've tracked stuff like that in the past, and maybe it's time for me to do one of those big posts again on Canadian Soccer News and look at signings and who's successful and who's not. But I suspect that if you look at the history of guys that have, not been regular starters at third-tier leagues in Europe that come into MLS, I'm just going to guess that they don't usually succeed. But nonetheless, we'll leave that well enough alone. But the question one is more of an impact signing for them, and look, Orlando obviously needs to do a lot and needs to completely flip itself over. The retirement of Kaká gives them the opportunity to do that. It's going to be a big job there, though, because Orlando they're a directionless mess. And they're going to get a lot of money for Lauren, too. So there's and they're going to have to replace almost anything. And in many ways, we have an expansion team coming in next year in LAFC, but in many ways, Orlando, when you look at what they're going to have to do, they might as well be an expansion team, the way they're going to have to start almost from scratch.
Expansion 2.0. Orlando's going into another maybe difficult time. And then, we talk about expansion. Forever, Atlanta will be linked with Minnesota, right? Just because they came into the league at the same time. Yes, with different size of bank account and different size of ambition once they joined the league. But if you go back to 2014 now, when NYCFC and Orlando, 2015, when Orlando and NYCFC joined the league, they both had the same type of ambition, same type of bank account, there was a very similar size club coming into the league. And if you're looking at what those clubs accomplished since the launch, well, I have to say, NYCFC is a lot further into their club development, into the identity of the fans, identity of itself as a team. Of course, they had David Villa, and any team with David Villa will be ahead of others. But I have to say, NYCFC and Claudio Reyna made a lot of good moves in their first 3 years of existence, especially if you compare them to their expansion brethren, Orlando City.
Yeah, look, NYC, it was funny. In the first year in the league, Orlando looked like they might be the slightly better team in terms of the performance in that first year, but certainly NYCFC has bypassed them by far. And I think that the reason NYCFC, it's a couple reasons. I think that they recognized where they made mistakes earlier than Orlando did and were able to adjust on the fly and react quicker. I do think that there's a certain level of an ability for NYCFC to sort of operate in a less pressure cooker environment than Orlando does too, which I think allows them to take greater risks in some way too. Last year is right that NYCFC was willing to do that, and I wonder whether in a market like Orlando, when they are the biggest show in town in the summer, whether they would have been able to do that as freely. That's just some speculation there. But beyond that, NYCFC is just showing a greater level of ability to make decisions that are effective and to find players that can work. I mean, look at the work that Vieira's, Vieira struggled in the playoffs. We can acknowledge that. I don't know what that means exactly.
Just that he had 5 guys on him all the time. That's what it means, but yes. Yeah.
Well, just Vieira, too, and his ability to adjust tactics and things like that. There certainly has not been as much success there as the regular season, but I tend to view that as much about maybe some misfortune as much as it's been about bad management there. And I think that they can figure that out. What they have done really well, if you look at Vieira, is he's managed to find gems like Harrison and just draft picks that other teams maybe bypass. And he really is embraced, surprisingly for a European, he's embraced the idea of finding talent in the NCAA in a way that other teams haven't, and has done really well with it. So I think there's a lot to be said about what New York is doing in terms of their ability to adjust to this league, which is ironic because when you look at the lead up to their launch, a lot of people thought that NYCFC would be the clueless team that wouldn't have any idea how to operate in an American environment. And Orlando, because they were successful below, would be the team that would embrace it and succeed. And it's been the exact opposite of what we expected, the very definition of irony.
Yeah, which is basically our day-to-day lives. But that's something totally different. All right, we'll wrap it up for today. We're back tomorrow with our year-end awards, the Canadian Player of the Year, MLS Player of the Year, all those little jazz awards that we're going to do. We're doing them tomorrow, so make sure you listen tomorrow at 11 a.m. tomorrow. You can listen to Soccer Today. You can follow Duane on Twitter, as always, at 24th Minute, and myself at Kev Laramee. And until tomorrow, have a great soccer.
You can find the podcast version of all the shows we do on iTunes, Apple Podcast, Google Play Store, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, and anywhere you get your podcast.